Somewhere in the quantum multiverse, Rodney Mullen never started skateboarding. What would that world look like? Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel about skateboarding where I talk about skateboarding and all different kinds of topics. I play skateboarding games, I review skateboarding stuff from time to time, and I'm answering your question today. The first of which is from Scooters on Elm Street, who says symmetrical decks, twin tail decks, are the future. Changed my mind. No, because I like decks that are symmetrical. I don't really get why they're not by default. Like, I get it on paper that the nose is usually a little bit bigger and it helps popping off the nose, but like, you can do fakey stuff and it's not that big of a deal. You can do switch off the nose when it's in the back, and that's fine too. Like, it doesn't make that much of a difference. So why even bother? And now for me, like when I skate a freestyle board, it's always twin tail. I don't like a board that's not the same, because in freestyle you might spin the board around halfway and you're over here. Well, now what? You know, in the combo, you would have to have all these ways to turn the board around, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather just be able to continue from where I landed and not have to think about it. In street, though, like, the only time you would really be messed up with it is if you did a line and the board was backwards halfway through. If you did a no slide, big spin, or something like that, with the next trick, your board would be backwards. So you either have to learn tricks that would spin the board back, like a hard flip or something like that, with the board backward and get good at that, or you just do the next trick with the board backwards. But I think there are some reasons why people might not like it. Some people don't set up their trucks the same. Like, their back truck might be more tight than the front truck is. You know, like, they want to be able to lead with the front foot more as they turn, so the front truck can turn easier than the back truck does. And if that's the case, you'd have to keep track of which tail was the tail anyway, you know? So for me, it's not that big of a deal because I put a different colored bolt on the tail, or I would draw a stripe on it or something, but it's not that hard to be able to immediately tell which side is the tail and do my stuff that way. So if I was at a skate shop and I said, hey, I'd like that board, and they said, cool, we've got it in standard and in twin tail options, I would pick the twin tail one. You know, but if it's not that simple, then I don't care that much. So I don't know. I do think it's better, and I don't really get why it's not that way, but it's not that big of a problem in my life anyway. All right. Zach says, Nollie is not nose switch. So am I crazy, or are all the Nollie flip and shove tricks technically wrong? Directionally speaking, that is. For example, if you wanted to do a Nollie hard flip, you'd have to rotate the board backside instead of its normal front side rotation. So why would it be a hard flip still and not a varial? The only counter argument I've heard is feeling. Like, it feels like a hard flip, therefore it is. And I don't like that argument because it makes the other Nollie trick names inconsistent. Curious to know your thoughts on this. Big fan of your channel. Yeah, the difference between Nollie and fakie is really annoying. And I get really technical about it and complain about it when people do it wrong. You know, like if a pro would argue that there's no such thing as a fakie tail slide because it's either a fakie ollie switch nose slide or a half cab regular nose slide. So it's nose slide this way and it's nose slide that way. Like, that doesn't make sense. That's dumb. I disagree. But I disagree because the rules that we have kind of suck. And that's just, unfortunately, the way that it is. But yeah, the way that I have always thought about it is more of an inward and outward type of thing. So if you spin the board and you flip in an inward way, so you're flipping in the same direction that the board is spinning, like it's spinning toward the way you flick, that would be a hard flip, right? So if you do it switch, nollie, fakie, or anything like that, you're popping it, sure, off the nose, it'd be considered backside technically, but it's inward. So you have inward and you have outward, and that would be the way that I would, you know, that's the more technical definition for how a flip trick is named. Whether it's front side or back side can be different. But yeah, like a nollie back pop shove is the same as a normal front shove. And it's just the way it is. I wish it wasn't like that. I remember getting in a heated argument with somebody about it a long time ago, and I was wrong. But I thought half cabs were the opposite way. So I thought a front side half cab, because, the way you learn a front side flip, halfway through the front side flip, you're facing forward. And so I posted this picture, and it was from a Thrasher or something like that. It was someone doing a half cab flip over this gap. And halfway through, he was facing forward. And it looked like this, and the board was upside down. And it could have been a front side flip or a front heel or switch front heel, or who knows what this trick is. But the caption said backside half cab flip. And I'm like, how is this trick backside? He's going forward halfway through. In every other stance, that would be front side. Normal, switch, and nollie halfway through. If you're forward, it's front side. Why is it different backside? Sorry, it just is. It sucks because it doesn't make any sense. It takes a lot of explaining to tell people why it is the way that it is. And the reason why is just because fakie was just backwards. So it was the same trick while you're going backwards, but nollie was like a whole new thing when it came out. And like, it was kind of, if you would carve the same way, you could pop the nose, but you're still riding forward. It's weird. It shouldn't have been like that, but there's no escaping it now. All right. But yeah, think about it as an inward versus outward thing, and it'll help your brain a little bit. All right. Uncle Jimmins has a very important question. Does skateboarding cause one's pee-pee to shrink dramatically? Yes. Every time you credit card, it pushes it back in a little bit, and it cannot ever be recovered. All right. Last question is from Public Carrera, who says, I was watching a quantum physics video on YouTube where they discussed the theoretical possibility of parallel universes. They mentioned that there may be multiple worlds containing multiple versions of the same people, albeit with some differences between them, such as their life paths or choices. My question might be borderline blasphemy here, but this got me thinking. How different do you think things would be if Roddy Mullen decided to scoot rather than skate? Would scooting be in the Olympics right now instead of skating? How far back would our current day skateboarding progress be set back? Would we just now in 2001 be figuring out how to do tray flips and gazelles? Are there potentially pros that we wouldn't have today? Would Mullen still probably find a way to do gazelles, Caspers, underflips with scooters? Or would we just have the Tony Hawk's Pro Scoot and the Scoot series instead of Pro Skater and Skate? Just how much would things be different? There's a lot of questions there. I'm not going to address all of them because I don't know much about scootering. So I don't know what Rodney Mullen would have been able to do if he picked up scootering instead. I'm sure he would have been a prodigy and done all kinds of stuff. So I've got a couple of thoughts about it. I was talking with somebody before about the things discovered by Einstein, right? Like his ideas and the calculations that he did and all that were unthinkable, like absolutely weird. You can convert energy into mass and back, and if you go really fast, time works differently, and like that. Those ideas were crazy, but you can run the math and prove that they're true. And I saw someone talking about, it was like a historian or something like that, saying that he was not the most intelligent person. Like, there are people who could do advanced calculus in their head instantly, but they didn't have the creativity to like consider these crazy possibilities. So I was having this discussion with somebody before, and they were saying like, if Einstein did not come up with that stuff, somebody else would have shortly thereafter, because a lot of people grew up in the same time as him. They learned things the same way as him. They had all the same inputs as him. You would need somebody roughly as smart to come up with it, but it might have taken a couple more years because it would have gotten easier and easier as more things were discovered and all that. It would have been less of a leap. So within a few years, somebody else would have come up with all that same stuff if it weren't for him. And I could see how that might be true. There's stories of things, where math was invented at the same time by two different people. There was recently, it was some kind of, I forget what the formula was, but it was invented by two people at pretty much the same time, and their names were pretty much the same too, just by chance. But, like people in the world are working on these problems, and if this person didn't do it, someone else probably would have. And I'm not sure how much I buy into that idea. It kind of makes sense though. So one of Mullen's biggest contributions to skateboarding is a flat ground ollie. And I did a video about who really invented the ollie, and it's mostly about the vert stuff. But there were people, was it Rocco, I think, in the 70s, who was talking about doing a front pop shove over like a broom. And if you could do a pop shove it and catch it in the air and clear something, it wouldn't be that crazy to figure that if enough people saw that and started to do that, someone would figure out how to do it without the board spinning. You know, I can just, like, the tail has to hit the ground for us to get air on these pop shove-its. But if I hit the ground and didn't turn it at all, like, somebody would have figured that one out. And once you figure out the ollie, kickflip's not that far off. You know, and like, it might have just, everything would have been a couple years later. Maybe it would be one individual that would still discover all the same stuff, or invent. I guess you don't discover a skateboarding trick, but would invent these tricks, or maybe multiple people. It would just be spread over more people. But the other option is that skateboarding wouldn't have grown quickly enough to become a big thing. You know, skateboarding was huge in the 70s, and then it died out around 82 or something like that, 82, 83. And lost a lot of its popularity. A lot of skate parks shut down and stuff like that. And street skating is what helped bring it back, because, you know, if I was growing up back then, and I was growing up in the same place, I had a paved driveway and dirt roads. That was it. So how am I going to learn how to skate? I don't have a half pipe. I don't have drainage ditches. I don't have pools. I don't have anything, you know, stuff that people would skate before street. So, like, how would I have gotten into skating? I wouldn't have been able to. And street skating was what got it to start to grow again. And, like, if a lot of the tricks were missing, if you couldn't ollie and you couldn't kickflip, then you're just cruising around and doing board slides, and maybe you do some kind of boneless every now and then, that type of stuff. How much fun would that be? Would skateboarding have taken off to the degree that it did? Would the Gons have become the Gons and done all the things that he did and invented all the tricks he did? It's very possible that that wouldn't have happened. And a skateboarding, and that would have like a pretty big effect, because if the Gons didn't skate, or he quit sooner or something like that, then people who are inspired by him in our time wouldn't have skated. And people who are inspired by the people who were inspired by him would not have skated. We probably have, like, you know, Gons' great grand inspirations that are skating right now. And we might have really not grown to that point. I made a video a long time ago about how aggressive inline kind of died out. And I think it could be kind of a similar spot that we would be in right now. If skating missed that boom back in the 80s, who knows what would have happened. Like, I think there would still be pro skateboarding, and it would be pretty good, but there would be 20 pro skaters, you know? Like, that's possible. There'd be 20 professional skaters, and maybe only one or two actually do it full time. The rest have jobs, but they're like the ones putting out all of the clips that a few people watch, a couple thousand views, you know what I mean? And that's very possible that that could be how it would go. And it's such a very sensitive thing. Like, you change one little thing and it could have this big domino effect. I think that the ollie would have been an easy enough thing to invent by someone else. And then the kickflip and the heel flip and the nollie and a lot of other things kind of just come with that. And I think street skating could still have taken off. Yeah, I think we would be at least 10 years behind by now because of the effect of how many people would have been not become skaters because of that. So yeah, I think it would be a big thing, but it's so tough to say. I want to double check some of your questions. Would scootering be in the Olympics right now? I mean, who knows? There's not that many tricks in scootering compared to skateboarding. I made a video about that too. I forget what I came up with, but like with a 3-trick combo, there's so many more tricks in skating that it's like a trillion times bigger. I'll see if I can find it. No promises if nothing came up there, but I remember I did a graphic of like, yeah, in scootering, and people were mad about it because I missed some stuff. I don't know everything about scootering, but I did a bar spin to a grind to a tail whip out, and like there's a certain amount. I had this little graph, and it was like, here's all of the combos if you multiply every trick you can come up with. In skateboarding, it goes poof, and it keeps going and going and going, and then the camera has to tilt up to show how tall it can be. There's that many more tricks in skateboarding. So for Mullen to invent the really hard scooter tricks sooner, I don't know. It would be better. Would it be in the Olympics? I don't know, because that was more of like, how mainstream can it be? When you have a guy like Tony Hawk out there putting a nice face on skateboarding and all that, it can be something that more people would accept. So if scootering would have like a bad boy type of image, which is hard to imagine, but if it did, then maybe that wouldn't have made it, you know? So who really knows about that? But would we just now in 2021 figuring out how to do tray flips? No, I think that would have been delayed by a couple years, but I think it still would have happened. So that's it. It's a totally unknowable question. And in the quantum multiverse, all of these things have been true. So who knows? If there's one multiverse where Tony Hawk didn't learn how to finger flip from freestyle, but also Mullen didn't skate, and also Steve Caballero named the cab something different. Like, there's just too many things. There's too many things. But that's it for now. I wanted to explore that a little bit because I thought that was kind of interesting. If you have an interesting question of your own, go to radratvideo.com and you can submit it through the form on the homepage. You can buy a shirt while you're there. There's also a second site with more shirt sets, like a different whole system. You can support the channel by subscribing. You can sponsor me on Patreon. You can comment, share with your friends, all kinds of stuff. But that's it for this time. I'll see you next time. And thanks for hanging out.